Hello and welcome to episode 120 of Retro Encounter, the RPGFan podcast of many topics. My name is Mike Sollosi and I'm your host for today, and with me is first, Nick Ransbottom.
Hey-yo.
And second, Nathan Lee.
Hey.
Now, Nick, Nathan, the three of us have something in common. We are probably the three people, I'm not going to rank us of course, who were most excited and most advocating for Monster Hunter World, which is the first 5th generation Monster Hunter game. It came out a couple days ago at the time of this recording, but it'll probably be a week ago at the time of this podcast posting. And all three of us have been playing Monster Hunter games for years and have many thoughts on the topic. So we basically had, hey, how about a Monster Hunter episode kicking around on the suggested episodes list on our Retro Encounter page for months now, but with World happening and everyone so enthusiastic about it, we decided to do a emergency quickie recording just for the week after Monster Hunter World came out. So I want to start with you, Nick. Can you give us a little bit of your Monster Hunter background and maybe a little bit on why you're so excited to be playing World?
Yeah, I started playing Monster Hunter 2, but I never really got that into it. It was Freedom Unite. I remember I rented it, and I just got obsessed with it. Like, completely obsessed. It was all I played for, like, weeks and weeks and weeks.
You could rent a PSP game? Was this GameFly or Blockbuster or what?
Blockbuster,
Okay,
yeah.
Huh.
And I ended up buying it, just because I loved it so much. I remember being enamored with, like, the... It's stupid, but having to drink a hot and cold drink, depending on your environment, I thought was just
Right.
such a nice little touch and made it feel so realistic. So yeah, I've been playing since then. I would say Try is really when I got like super into the series. With Freedom Unite, it was always a little weird to control because of the PSP. So Try.
Oh, did you have to do the old claw technique with your
I did.
with your left hand, manipulating the camera by like twisting your index finger over the over the D-pad?
Yes,
Yeah,
and it was
God.
very uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's a lot of hand cramps I think happened to Monster Hunter players over the years with that claw. All right, please continue.
So Try is when I really got into it because I could use an actual controller. And I spent, I want to say like over 300 hours in Try, plus at least 150 in Try Ultimate for the Wii U. And that's when I started really loving it. 4, I never really got that into. I liked it, but for whatever reason, it didn't grab me. So I probably had like maybe 30 hours logged into that. I barely scratched the surface. It's kind of the same thing with Generations. I'm only about 60 hours into it. I was actually just playing it the other week, going back into it and everything to get ready for the new one. But yeah, it's a series that I think is really special to me because I met a lot of friends through playing it, like meeting up on online forums and everything to exchange IDs and hunt together. And it's just a good social experience for me, I think.
Right on, and we will definitely talk about the social experience of Monster Hunter multiplayer in a short time. But before I have you go, before I ask you the same question, Nathan, I want to run it back a little bit, in case a listener maybe isn't familiar with the large series at large as all of us are. Monster Hunter 1 was a PlayStation 2 game. It had a PSP port and then also an expanded version. Monster Hunter 2 was also a PS2 game, but then it had a PSP version and a PSP expansion that were very different from the PS2 version. And I think that first PSP one, the PSP expansion, it was called Freedom Unite, and that was the one that Nick mentioned being his first big one. Then you have Monster Hunter Try, which was Monster Hunter 3 for the Wii. And it had its expanded version was, I think, a 3DS game, correct? Was 3 Ultimate 3DS?
It was 3DS and Wii U.
Okay, 3DS and Wii U was 3 Ultimate. Got it.
Yeah.
And then Monster Hunter 4 and 4 Ultimate, were they both 3DS or were they Wii U and 3DS?
4 I think was 3DS only. Yeah.
Okay. And 4U was also 3DS.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And now we're in Monster Hunter World, which is basically Monster Hunter 5, but they're calling it World, and it is for Xbox One and PS4 for now, and has a PC port coming later. So, all right, that's basically all of the Monster Hunter in the main series that we've had. There's also an Asia only online MMO version of it called Monster Hunter Frontier, and one exclusively for Chinese market PCs called Monster Hunter Online. And there's a few other spin-offs we'll get to later, but we're mostly going to be talking about the main series. And Nathan, now same question to you that I gave to Nick. What's your general background with Monster Hunter?
All right, so I played the original Monster Hunter on PS2 way back in the day. It was a game that I kind of fell in love with, even though I wasn't very good at it. I don't think I got past HR3, Hunter Rank 3 on the original. But it was just kind of awkward with me with the controls. You haven't used the right stick to attack was just really odd for me.
And also Monster Hunter was not really an early PS2 game. I think it came out in '02 or '03. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It might be older than that. But it also was one of the early PS2 games to use that modem that you could get optionally for online multiplayer.
Yeah, it was. So I think that was when the boom really began. I think it was maybe after the original one. But Monster Hunter Online's always been integral to the experience of Monster Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
All
Right.
then,
So you played the first one, and then after that, what was your experience?
yeah, after that, I didn't have a PSP, so I missed all the PSP releases. And then Try is what got me back into Monster Hunter. Just the same with Nick. I probably put around 800 hours into Try.
Sweet Moses.
Yeah, I put a lot into Try. And then 3 Ultimate, I didn't spend as much time on because I was kind of sour over you couldn't transfer your experience, which makes sense. But I didn't want to play a game that I already played for 850 hours again from the scratch. So then I played all of them since then. So 4 Ultimate I played, and then Generations. And now on World.
That was one nice thing about the Monster Hunter Freedom 2 and Freedom Unite, which were the second generation PSP games. Was the Unite was the expanded version of 2, but you could transfer your character data over from Freedom 2 to Freedom Unite. I opened up my old Freedom Unite file earlier today just to see what I can remember from that, and it's a little funny. It didn't transfer all the data over. I think it transfers your hunter and all of your items, but not things like your guild card and all of your data, because it showed me as having about, I think, around 500 or 550 hunts total, but a few things like several weapons that had 0 quests on, attached to them, which is false, because I definitely tried every weapon when I played Freedom 2 before Freedom Unite. But basically it didn't transfer everything over, but it's awesome that you were able to do that for at least some of the Monster Hunter games. But yeah, I guess it's my turn now. I got into it with Monster Hunter Freedom 2 because my best friend, who I've been playing video games with for 25 years or so, or okay, more like 21 or 22 years, he got really into the first PSP Monster Hunter Freedom, and when 2 came, and he was bugging me to play it with him for, I don't know exactly how long, maybe a year, and when 2 came out, he bought me a copy as a gift. And I said, all right, well, now he gave this to me, and it's a multiplayer game, so I should at least give it a good faith effort. And I got into it pretty deep. I think my total hours played ended up being about 200 on Freedom 2 and another 200 to 250 on Freedom Unite. It was actually, no, I just checked that game. I think it was like 225 or something for on Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. So I got really, really into those. And but then I fell off the wagon a little bit when Capcom moved over to Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii, and my friend who got me into the series was unwilling to play a Wii because he only really plays on Sony systems and PC, and I tried Monster Hunter Tri and really hated the controls. I mostly I was being a little obstinate, and I did try it on a pro controller, but I didn't like the underwater stuff. Basically I was very attached to the PSP Monster Hunter, and a little mad that the third PSP Monster Hunter, which is called Portable 3 in Japan, and never came out in the United States. So I was a little bit mad about that, and I didn't like the Wii controls, so I stopped playing Monster Hunter after the PSP ones. And when I attended E3 in 2017 and saw the trailer for Monster Hunter World, and then saw a live demo of Monster Hunter World from one of the game's directors, I was enchanted. It looked like it was a modernization of Monster Hunter that the series needed, and got really excited for it. So after I got home from E3, I bought a copy of Monster Hunter Generations, which is, I'm not sure if you mentioned this before, is a 3DS game that acts as a bit of like a cap off to the first 4 generations of Monster Hunter, because you visit towns and locations from all of the previous 3 generations, and it has a bunch of monsters from all the games in the series, and it has a bunch of weird twists to the gameplay with a style system that maybe we can talk about later. But I played a little bit of that between 20 and 25 hours, I think. But now Monster Hunter World is here, and I'm excited. I am relapsing to an old addiction that I played for 400 hours in the 2000s, 10 years ago, and I'm back in. So let's take another step back. These Monster Hunter games, it's a little weird to be covering them for a website that really focuses only on RPGs, because these games stretch the definition of what an RPG is a little bit. We don't need to go into what's an RPG, what isn't an RPG discussions here, but in general, these games have always been action games with just the barest bones of story attached to them. Like, because I didn't play any of the 4th-generation Monster Hunter games. Was there some kind of story mode in 4 or 4U? Or some kind of, at least, narrative thrust?
I think it was as basic as, the previous ones, to my knowledge. Nothing certainly stood out for me.
They tried a little bit harder to create a story, but it's still still very bare bones story.
All right, because the one I played the most in Monster Hunter Freedom 2 and Freedom Unite, the story is you create your character, you visit a new town, the town is beset by monsters, and monsters are always creating problems around them, so you join a monster hunting guild and hunt these monsters. You build new weapons, new armor from the monsters' parts, and just as the threats around the town escalate, you fight stronger and stronger monsters until you're, in an endgame black hole of never-ending monsters and never-ending equipment. I never. There's
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, basically. It's a little bit MMO in progression, because you're always just doing more challenging and challenging missions for rarer and rarer materials. But would you say that, does the story even matter? Like, they're trying a little harder for a single player story content with Monster Hunter World. But Nathan, do you think that that story ever matters for Monster Hunter?
Story, it doesn't matter too much. It's kind of just more getting you used. Single player is good for just for beginners to get started in mechanics in the game.
Right. So there isn't a whole lot of story attached to most of the Monster Hunter games. You're a newcomer to a village. It's a player created character. And it's what you're doing is ostensibly protecting the village. But I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, but Monster Hunter World is trying a little harder this time. Nick, I know we haven't gotten that far in Monster Hunter World yet. It came out only a couple days ago at the time of this recording. But what do you think of the new story tricks that Monster Hunter World is trying to bring to the series?
Well, I'm about 18 hours in. I gotta go
yikes.
for review. I'm Hunter Rink 6 already. From what I have played, I actually am enjoying the story they're putting in. The cutscenes, in quests and everything, really help to flesh out the universe and the ecosystem and everything. The story itself, still kind of basic, but there is motivation now as to what you're doing. You're this hunter. There's this new world that you're exploring. You're part of this group called the Commission, and you're the Fifth Fleet. And you're out there tackling, these new monsters in this all new territory, trying to discover why these elder dragons keep migrating. There's this big action sequence that reminded me a little bit of Uncharted. You're
Hmm.
scaling the the like back of a monster and attacking magma cores. It's really really cool. So I like what they're doing. It's a story that's, like I said, basic, but it gives it motivation, and there are really good set pieces so far.
Yeah, I'm basically with you. It seems to be a little bit more tied to like ecology than older games in the series because you the mission that you're on is a discovery mission and a fact finding mission, and there's ecologists and quartermasters and botanists that you interact with at your home base, and like collecting data is more important to Monster Hunter World than any other previous game in the series. But I basically like it too. There's a little bit more story bones in World than in any other game in the series, but it's still it's still the same old Monster Hunter in a good way, I would say, for the most part. Um, but it's right there in the title. This game is about monsters and hunting them, and part of what really drew me into the series was that all of these monsters are really cool designs. Like you're basically like just hunting and capturing dinosaurs and dragons and giant beasts, and the Capcom people that design these really have a lot of fun, I think, because they're a bunch of cool wyverns and dragons and whatnot. Nick, do you have let's say from the first time you played the game, did you have a favorite monster that you just loved hunting, or maybe you liked it so much you didn't want to hunt it anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the one that stuck out to me the most was probably Rathalos.
Oh, so
Which,
so so the poster boy.
yeah, I just
Mhm.
thought he was so cool and such a pain in the butt to fight. Uh, and he just seemed very powerful, like he would just rip me to shreds. And I thought that was fun and also empowering to fight a monster like that and taking it on against all odds and everything.
Yeah, Rathalos was the cover monster in the very first Monster Hunter game, and when I went to the Monster Hunter World section of Capcom's booth at E3, they had a giant Rathalos statue hanging there, and
Oh,
I'm sure you
nice.
can find a
That was
picture of it.
nice.
I'm sure you can find a picture of it if you look at the E3 coverage of most gaming websites, including RPG fans. But and yeah, and it's a big, cool red fire wyvern, and but the Rathalos are all male. They're the female of the same species is called a Raytheon, and they're green and a little bit less aggressive. But they're really cool looking. Nathan, do you have a favorite monster from say the first couple generations?
That's going to be generic. You actually just mentioned the Rathian, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the monster for me that I never beat as a kid, just because part of it terrified me too, because I was only like say like 10 or 11 years old when I played the original, and trying to grab the monster eggs from the nest while the Rathian chases you is quite the fear
Those
for me
missions are
as a little kid.
challenging because when you pick up those monster eggs, you can hardly walk or climb. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
I don't remember if all of them have it, but whenever an egg delivery mission happens, I just
Grown.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
oh no, another one
Uh,
of these.
there are worse ones in later games, like Powder Stone ones. Those ones are the worst. They damage you while you carry them.
Right? Yeah, powder stones are like some volatile volcanic rocks or something.
Yeah.
The other missions I hate the most are the ones where you have to harvest bug parts
See,
because the giant insect enemies that you fight will often be destroyed completely when you hit them, and you can't harvest the parts you need for the quest. So you have to do something like poison them with like a poison knife so that they'll die normally, and then you can carve them for parts. And we should mention like one thing about Monster Hunter that I think turns off a lot of people from the series is just the overabundance of items. Like Nick mentioned, hot drinks and cold drinks that you have to drink to enter certain areas. Like you need to drink a cold drink to hunt in the desert during the daytime, or else you'll take damage. And you'll need to drink a hot drink to hunt in the desert at nighttime, or else your stamina will drop super fast. And oh shoot, there's yeah,
whetstones.
whetstones and tranquilizers and a bunch of different things for healing and
Like traps and
yeah, 5 or 6 status effects. There's a bunch of stuff to deal with in Monster Hunter, and then elaborate crafting systems. I think a lot of people get scared away from the series from that. But I had a friend that had been playing the game for over a year, guiding me through most of that. And I think that new players a lot of the time need a bit of a guiding hand to help get into it.
yeah.
I should say too, going off what you said about the giant insects, one of the best things about Monster Hunter, well, one of the worst things actually, is the progression loop. And I say it's the best thing because that's what makes it so much fun. The worst thing because it also makes it totally addictive. Um, and
Hmm.
one of my favorite armor sets throughout the entire series is the giant insect one from Try, and it's Binaharbra, I think is how you pronounce the monster's name. It's a
Yeah.
giant like mosquito.
Okay.
And if you I farmed for probably like 3 hours, if not more, trying to get the carves because they were so rare, and you
Hmm.
had to do poison smoke bombs to poison them, and you could only get like one or two at a time with one of those smoke bombs. But the payoff was an amazing insect winged tuxedo with a top hat, and you could change the color of it. And so I loved it.
That's cool.
Um,
I'm not sure if there was a Banabra set in the older one I played. Maybe there was.
it's
Hmm.
Maybe, but it's so hard to get Banabra parts that you probably missed it.
Yeah, I don't. I know that Vespoids and Hornitors were in Freedom Unite, but I'm not sure Banabras were. I guess Banabras is a little bit more mosquito-like, and Vespoids are a little bit more wasp-like. I think I'm
Yeah.
looking at
yeah, I'm thinking
yeah,
yeah.
looking at pictures of them. I think that's the gist of it. But yeah, that sounds cool. Did Nathan? Did you have a favorite like armor set from any of the games that you grew attached to?
I want to say something maybe like the Logic Cruise from Try. It's also in
Hmm.
like I think for your generations. Can't remember which one, but that was a cool one because especially in Try, having to hunt the monster on the cover was it was always a treat to be able to do that and take it
Yeah,
down.
the Lagiacrus
I like,
is a cool looking aquatic dinosaur looking guy, and he's the cover monster of Monster Hunter Try, right?
yep.
Right. Okay.
And he
So
shoots
it's a
lightning out of his back. It's really great.
A lightning
yeah.
sea serpent. Dope. Okay. What's cool about the
Yeah.
Lagiacrus set?
I just felt like the way it looks, the way you get the Logic Cruise's spikes on the back of your armor. I think that's what happens. It's either that or the horns you get on your helmet. One of those. Just if I could pull up the design, but yeah, I like that part of it. A lot of the designs in Monster Hunter games are just awesome.
Yeah, they always have the I mean, the monsters and the armor always look cool, and part of the fun of of doing all this hunting is making the next cool armor set. And I mean, speaking personally, I the armor that I loved the most back in my Monster Hunter Freedom days was probably the Cianator set, or at least one of the later ones. The Shogun Cianator is a gigantic hermit crab with like blade claws in the front of it, and its armor set basically gave you extra sharpness to your weapons and had your sharpness not decay as quickly. I think one of us mentioned whetstones as among the many items that you have to deal with during hunts, and that's because as you attack monsters, your weapons dull and lose sharpness, and sharpness is an important damage component to your weapons. So you have to use whetstones on your weapons to maintain sharpness. But this Cianator set, which is this real crazy like I don't know, Shredder from Ninja Turtles looking thing. Uh, Basically gave you bonus sharpness and had your sharpness decay less quickly. And because I always wanted as much sharpness as possible, I used that set for a long, long time and got really attached to it. But let's see. We've been talking. I guess I just mentioned weapons and their sharpness a little bit, and I think that this is one of the most important parts of Monster Hunter over the course of the series. With other than we won't talk about medium bow guns because I think medium bow guns were only in one of the third generation games and they sort of forgot about them afterwards. But other than those, there are 14 weapon types in Monster Hunter, and each of those weapon types is very different and very detailed, and there's a lot going on no matter what weapon you choose. So, I'm not sure how to begin this. Nathan, tell the listeners about one or two of your favorite weapons and why they're unique and different. Because there's a lot going on in any weapon in this game. But so
All right, so I think
give the listeners a primer on one or two of your preferred weapons.
all right, so one of the ones I've always stuck with, it's just a little bit odd coming from a veteran hunter, is the sword and shield, which is your basic one. So Sword and Shield just allows you to. It's a very versatile weapon set. So with Sword and Shield, you can use items while you have your weapon drawn, which is unique to Sword and Shield. You cannot do that with anything else. You also get a little bit of protection with the Sword and Shield, with you block attacks. You will take a small bit of damage, but not. You won't be able to block it entirely. And it just allows you to be very nimble because you don't have to put your weapon away very often, and you can walk a lot faster with it. And probably
Yeah,
my next one would. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, yeah, there's you're right. There's good mobility and defense and tricks with the sword and shield, but it doesn't have a ton of damage output compared to a lot of other weapons. But I didn't ever main the sword and shield, but for a couple really difficult hunts in Unite, I built an ice sword and shield only for two specific monsters because otherwise I would just die way too often and take way too much damage if I was using any other weapon. Um, it wasn't shoot the weapon was called the Ice Fang, and I used it only for desert Blango bosses and for Rejongs, and that was it. so
Yeah,
so
I like to tell my friends that, hey, at least I don't die when I'm hunting with them because we use Sword and Shield.
yeah, it's a very safe weapon, but sometimes you want that safety on your weapon. So what was the other one you want to talk about?
But I was going to talk about the hunting horn, which is a bit of a more recent one, because I'm a bit more of a support player. I'm not like too into getting hit by the monster a lot, which is a little bit odd for me. But hunting horn allows you to buff your teammates with, say, attack or defense or health, or you can also buff yourself. You can make yourself move faster. You can reduce weapon sharpness, or you can negate wind. It does all sorts of things, which is helpful for your team when hunting like something big.
Yeah, and Nick, I mean, you can if you have any comment on this too, please chime in. I think the hunting horn designs are kind of amazing. Like they're all giant bagpipes or giant guitars or shamisen or wind instruments. They're among the more unique looking weapons, and you both bash monsters with them and play songs that can heal or boost you and your allies. They're goofy, but I am garbage at using hunting horns.
Yeah,
My
same.
my regular hunting partner did use them sometimes, but man, they are an awkward. But they can be powerful, but they're an awkward and very different weapon. I don't like using
Mhm.
them.
I kind of like using them kind of like an alternate to the hammer, so because it just does a little less damage, but you can also do the buff. So I find
Mm.
it a good alternate.
So, Nick, do you have a favorite one or two weapons that you want to talk about for however long?
Yeah, I think my favorite. It's also a recent one. It's the insect glaive,
Mhm.
which is a little more on the technical side, but not. It's not too complex. It's not nearly as complex as I find the hunting horn to be, which I can never play for the life of me. So with the insect glaive, you have a creature called a kinsect, and what you do is you aim it at a specific part of a monster: the head, the tail, the feet, and the body. And depending on where you hit, it gives you a it draws like an essence from the monster and gives you a buff. So there's like an attack boost, a defense boost, a speed boost, or you can sometimes get health. Um, and the glaive also allows you to be very mobile and to jump into the air and everything. It makes it easy to mount monsters once that mechanic was introduced, which I think was in like four.
Yeah, it's four.
Um, it I'm using it right now in the new one, and I am just zipping across the map, uh, barely getting touched by the monsters, with being able to dodge up in the air and everything. It's really fantastic. Um,
Yeah,
my second one, oh, go ahead.
I'm a little intimidated by the glaive because it was introduced after I stopped playing Monster Hunter, and in the Monster Hunter games I played in the past, the mounting wasn't a feature yet. But the glaive is wild. It's really stylish. It looks like correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the glaives look like basically quarterstaves with blades or attachments on either end, and there's a lot of spinning, a lot of very quick movements, a lot of very stylish stuff going on for glaive users. And then you have your attached bug that can pop out of the glaive, bite or drain the monster, and then return and give you a boost. There's a lot going on, and they're really cool looking, but I don't even know where to begin trying to figure out how to use one.
I always tell people they're about as complex as a dual blade once you get the hang of the kinsect. And the kinsect itself too, it has its own tree of upgrades. So you can actually change what type of kinsect it is. but you can also imbue it with like an elemental property. I have three right now. One is water, one is, and then two are thunder. One has a healing property, one has a paralysis property, and one has a poison property.
Hmm.
So they're very useful. Um, and they're not too hard to play. I think what intimidates people is the Kinsect, and also the fact that you have got to be mobile when you are using this weapon. Because if you're just stationary, you might as well be using something else because you're not taking advantage of the actual weapon.
Right on. And listeners, if that sounds complicated, that's only one of 14 weapons that this game has. But Nick, what was the second weapon you wanted to describe to us?
I really love the long sword. I was using that a lot in Generations. Apparently, I logged in to see which weapon I was using the most, and it was actually the longsword and not the glaive. That is very useful, I find, for breaking off the tails of the monster, like to
Hmm.
cut them off.
Mhm.
Which you'll blah blah blah. You're going to want to do in order to get specific carves, for specific weapons and armor sets. Um, and it's a beast, man. That thing can slice and dice like nothing else,
Yeah, I
and they're
like
so
long.
cool looking.
I
It's
like
like a
long.
giant.
Yeah, they're giant Nodachi sized katanas, and they all look cool. Well, it's I think one of the cooler looking weapons. And the movements for it are maybe not as fast as dual swords or the glaive, but it's a fast, flowy, stylish weapon too.
Just makes you feel like a really
Mhm.
cool samurai or something taking down a gigantic beast.
I
Yeah,
think
it's always been one of my favorites. I remember using it a lot in Try.
longsword's one of the weapons I'm using the most now in World. It's one of the 4 or 5 weapons I use the most in Unite as well. And the one complicated part about it is that there's a spirit meter that you build as you attack, and then you can you use a special R button or R2 button spirit combo once your meter's full, and if you land the last hit of that, your sword takes on a glow, and you can upgrade that glow from a white glow to a yellow glow to a red glow, and each one of the glows increases your attack power by I think 15 or 20%. So longsword is all about building up that meter, spending all that meter, building up your glow, getting to a red glow, and then just really shredding them once you have a red glow on your cool katana. And it's a very fun weapon to use. I like using the longsword a lot.
Yeah, it just makes you feel really powerful. Um, and like I said, the designs on all of them are just amazing. They probably do have my favorite designs outside of the hunting horns, I think.
The hunting horns I think are very unique, cool designs, but I agree the longsword katanas all look awesome. I guess it's my turn now. Just to give you an idea of how much I use this weapon, in my Unite save file that I looked at earlier today, which means it ignores all of my freedom to hunts and only my hunts from Unite. So about 200 hours of questing. Uh, I think it was around 450 or 500 hunts, and more than 300 of them were with the hammer. So like about
Mhm.
65 or 75% of my hunts were 65 or 70% of my hunts were with the hammer. The hammer is about as big as you are. It is a giant, unwieldy thing, and most of your strikes are just overhead strikes directly into the ground. There's not a whole lot of horizontal distance on the hammer, but it is hugely impactful and satisfying. Like even just hearing the crunch and splash sounds you get from hammer strikes, and it's probably the best weapon in the game for breaking monsters' heads or fangs because
Mhm.
it deals a lot of impact damage that's good for breaking. But of course, you can't get tail cuts, and sometimes and some other I think monster parts and monster damage won't work for impact weapons. But I loved using the hammer, and a lot of them is like for a lot of monsters that when standing their head is several feet above yours. If you stand sort of to the near their head but at an angle so you're not directly in front of them, a regular hammer combo will be able to hit them the Rathalos or whatever at least 2 or 3 times right in their skull. And if you hit them in the head enough times, you'll knock them out and stun them for several seconds with them on the ground. So when I'm playing the hammer, it's you can't block with it, So you're always just trying to get in position, trying to figure out which kind of hammer strike, whether it's the R or triangle or circle strike, would get you in the best position, and then just trying to land headshots until you stun them. And that's the game within a game of the hammer, which is again the weapon I use by far the most in my monster hunting career. And you both went into the longsword and the sword and shield, which are two weapons I used a lot. But the other one I want to talk about is the bow gun, more specifically the heavy bow gun. There's two bow gun style weapons in Monster Hunter: light bow gun and heavy bow gun. And they're basically crossbows that use a variety of ammo, and being able to load and reload and switch ammos on the fly is very key to using them effectively. But light bow guns give you more mobility. Like when you have it out, you can move much more quickly. And heavy bow guns have more firepower, and also you can like unload your entire ammo supply of certain types of ammo when using a heavy bow gun. And with light bow guns, you cannot do that, but you can fire all of your ammo of one type at once. Like you can do it's called rapid fire. You can do a triple shot of, say, fire ammo on a light bow gun, but on the rapid fire on a heavy bow gun will be just unloading a bunch of fire ammo at once. Basically you get more mobility and more safety on a light bow gun and good elemental shots. But you get more raw damage and much less mobility on a heavy bow gun. And I loved using the heavy bow gun, especially if I had a set that gave me more evasion, so I could, I wouldn't get caught, completely immobile, and my rolls would be safer. But like bow gunning is completely different from every other weapon in Monster Hunter, and I picked up the heavy bow gun only because I was having a lot of difficulty hammering certain monsters, and my hunting partner friend said, "Oh, you should try to bow gun those because they're jokes if you learn how to bow gun," and he was absolutely right. Speaking specifically about Plesioth and Gravios, and I started bow gunning just to hunt those two monsters, and they ended up being the weapon I used the third or fourth most in my monster hunting career.
Is there a reason you chose the heavy bow gun over the light bow gun? Because for me, I like to be very agile and mobile in the battlefield. So I'm just interested to know, like, do you like to hit heavier than you do to, move quickly?
Basically, yes. And the thing about it is, like, I was already used to using the hammer and the longsword, which don't have any defensive moves, and but do give you a lot of good roll timing. So I was comfortable playing with a weapon that made me mostly immobile, except I could still roll. So when I tried both the heavy bowgun and light bowgun, I found that I was just killing monsters faster with the heavy bowgun, and if I used an equipment set like like a Nargacuga equipment set, and I had some extra evasion, my survivability was just fine. So I tried both, liked heavy bowgun more, especially if I had evasion boosts with it. So and I sort of discovered that playing Freedom 2 and not Freedom Unite, and which is why my Freedom Unite save is a lot of heavy bowgun and almost no light bowgun.
I may try to get out of my comfort zone and try that out in the new one.
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah, I might try bowguns.
Monster Hunter World makes bowgunning a little bit easier, and for good reasons. Because in the older Monster Hunter games, there was separate armor sets for bowgun and for ranged weapons and melee weapons called Blade Master versus Gunner. But that's not the case anymore. In Monster Hunter World, you build, I don't know, say a Barath set, and you don't have to make a separate Barath Gunner and Barath Blade Master. Your Barath set is the only one you need to make, and when you switch from a melee weapon to a ranged weapon, just the stats on it and the skills on it will tweak slightly to fit the weapon that you're using, which makes things easier. And also having two good joysticks for aiming makes the basic controls and mechanics of bowgunning much easier. There's still a lot of ammo manipulation and reloading tactics to deal with. And so that'll be new to people if you haven't bowgunned before. But I'm excited to try it. I think I've done one mission with a bowgun so far, but I really want to just get as far as I can, mostly using the hammer and the longsword and a couple other weapons. And once I have more resources and I'm more comfortable with the game, I'll build a good bowgun and try gunning again. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm gonna try that out.
it's worth it. Like, and again, part of the reason that there's 14 weapons in the game is I think that a lot of monsters are better suited to one weapon than the other. Like I started bow gunning just to deal with two specific monsters, and I made one of the best ice sword and shields in the game in Freedom Unite just to deal with two monsters. I think it's really hard to be a one weapon person in a Monster Hunter game because that really puts you at a disadvantage. But
Yeah.
new players or returning players, I urge you try all of them and pick a couple or several favorites, and don't be one of those GameFAQs.com edgelords that uses dual blades and everything, because those people are just the worst.
I would say too, it also is like limiting your enjoyment of the game
Yeah,
to just stick to one weapon.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
that's the fun. The 14 different weapon types are so different. So yeah, don't stick to one weapon.
and
You have to experiment even just for yourself. Like you never know what weapon you might like the best.
yeah, I was terrified of using ranged weapons because the ranged weapons are light bowgun, heavy bowgun, and the bow and arrow, which is much more mobile and safe than bow gunning, and you don't deal with ammo, but you do deal with arrow coatings and all kinds of weird mechanics that terrify me, frankly. But I was very resistant to bow gunning until I was told you should try that against a Plesioth, and I ended up loving it. But one thing now, Nick was absolutely right. The 14 weapons are all so different that sticking to one, I mean, that means you're sticking to what is it, 7% of all of the action in the game, that which seems insane. Um, so definitely try all the weapons, but what's also important, I think, how all of the weapons are the same. In that every hammer has the same range, the same mechanics, the same everything as every other hammer. The only thing that changes is, damage and sharpness and what element it is and what status effect it has. But every hammer mechanically is identical. So if you learn, if you mostly use the hammer like I did back in the day 8 years ago, then then you're learning every hammer in the game. It's not like you get a new hammer and suddenly everything is different. You're just dealing more damage or a different kind of damage. So mastering each of these weapons, there's only 14 of them. You don't have to master hundreds of weapons with different timings and different speeds. Just 14, which I think helps a little bit because if every hammer had a different weight or different timing, it would be
Mm.
insane trying to learn a new weapon every time you upgrade your hammer. Just using that as an example.
I think that
Yeah,
would
people
turn a lot
think
of people
Monster
off.
Hunter. Go ahead, Nathan.
Also, that would probably turn a lot of people off already if they weren't already Monster Hunter fans.
So yeah, those are 6 of the 14 weapons that we went into in pretty intense detail, and I mean all 6 of those were different, were so different that I mean we didn't go into the great sword, which is usually the starting weapon that they give you in every game, which is like like a cloud strife sized buster sword that can attack or guard. And we talked about the bow a little bit. There's lances and gun lances, which are among the most offensive weapons in the game. We use giant shields and lances that let you poke and explode on enemies. Those my the gun lance is the favorite weapon of my friend that I play with the most.
It's
And
gonna be very clashy.
yeah, there's 14 of these. But I also want to exit my comfort zone a little bit. I've mostly been hammering like old times, but I really want to try one of the weapons that was added after I stopped playing. I've done a couple hunts with the switch axe, and it's been pretty fun so far. But I haven't done very many hunts yet.
I will teach you the glaive. I
I
promise.
I will take you up on that tutoring offer eventually, but for now I want to just make my way through the game a little bit. I'm trying to get a full Tobi Kadachi set.
Yeah,
See,
I could teach you a little bit about the switch axe too if you need.
Yeah, I like the switch axe so far, but again, I think I've done 3 hunts with it, which barely counts. So now one thing that I think if Monster Hunter has a mascot character that isn't, say, the big popular monsters like Rathalos or Tigrex that are on the cover, it's probably the felines or the Linians or the Palicos or whatever they decide to call the cats in each game. Because basically in the world of Monster Hunter, there's species of cats that are intelligent and walk on 2 legs. That some of them are wild and you fight them in during hunts, and some of them are companion animals and assistant animals, and they're very cute. You get to design your own Palico for the beginning of Monster Hunter World, which I'm not sure you could do in other games. Could
I
you?
mean, you can, but it's not to the degree of this game.
Right. All right. So, Nick, tell us about the cats in Monster Hunter because they're so cute.
They are very cute. So cute, in fact, I named mine Lil Muffin. Because that's what he is. He's a little muffin.
That's a cute
Uh,
name. Hmm.
it is. It is. He's very adorable. I like how I customized him. So your cat, when you're playing single player, is basically, a second player. It accompanies you on your journey. It has its own AI. It can drop out helpful items for you, like it can heal you. It can paralyze a monster based on the weapon you're using. Super useful. And it's a way for if you okay, so Monster Hunter is very much a multiplayer experience and a very social experience. But if you do want to play single player, the Palicos help you get through your journey by yourself. So they're very important and cute.
Yes, it is. They are important, but it is also important that they are very cute. Um, so Nathan, like, what's your attachment to palicos or felines? I'm never sure what to call them because Monster Hunter changes their basic terminology almost every game or every generation. So, what's your attachment and experience using the cats in Monster Hunter?
I like using them during single player. They're pretty useful, especially early on when you're new and they can help you out with bombing monsters or paralyzing them, laying traps, that kind of thing. They kind of drop off later on because they don't really have the health to sustain against high rank monsters. But it's always nice to have like a monster, basically have a monster decoy so you can heal and do other things. So I like having them around. It's way better than doing it solo.
Right on. So yeah, if all of the complexities of combat and monsters that we were talking about earlier are making you unwilling to play Monster Hunter, listener, maybe the cats will bring you back in. Okay, we've been talking for almost an hour already, but there's still plenty to deal with. I put out a call on Twitter uh, earlier this week if anyone wanted to had specific topics that they wanted us to bring up during this episode, and we got a couple responses. First of all, from a friend of the website, Simer Farag, he asked me why I'm suddenly excited about Monster Hunter again, and is this the biggest heel turn since Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan in 1987? First of all, to answer the second part of his question, no. Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels was a much bigger heel turn, and that was a few years later. And to answer the first part of the question, I already brought that up, I guess, a little bit. I fell off the wagon in Monster Hunter because I didn't like the Nintendo one, and maybe I didn't mention this. My hunting partner that I played with a lot moved to Germany in 2010. And he's back in the United States now. But for a while, because I had so much fun playing multiplayer and found the single player in Freedom Unite in the high rank and G rank quests quite miserable at times, that I basically stopped playing around then. But we also got a question from Dan Dirty D28 on Twitter. He's playing Monster Hunter World right now, and it's the first Monster Hunter he's ever played, and he wants us to give any tips for new players that we might have. So, starting with you, Nathan, if you could, consolidate your best Monster Hunter advice into one or two tips, what would you recommend for our friend Dan?
I'd recommend. Well, I think I mentioned it already. Is go through each of the weapons and find out what you like. Find out what best suits you. If you like a more nimble playstyle, you should try out the sword and shield or the insect glaive or the light bowgun. Or if you prefer to get right in the monster's face, you could try the dual blades. You could try like the hammer, longsword, that kind of thing. So always find out what's works best for you, and always make use of the supply box. I think I know I was playing with a couple of my new friends, my friends who are new to Monster Hunter, and they kind of just went on the quest without picking up supplies from the supply box. You should always go in there and just make sure you're stocked up for the journey. Oh, that's probably the most important thing is always make sure you're prepared. Bring along a whole bunch of healing items with you because I think
Right.
this game does away with inventory, right? Or to a certain degree, like even
It doesn't it doesn't no, it doesn't do away with inventory. You still have a limited inventory, but healing is a little bit easier because you can find like healing plants and healing bugs during hunts that you can take advantage of. But carrying or making sure you have a supply of healing items and boosting items is very very useful. Agreed.
Yep, and always eat before you go out.
Right.
Oh.
Quick aside. I love the cat chef in town in Monster Hunter World. Just
Oh yeah,
He's
it's been a
great.
staple now since I
yeah,
think since 4 Ultimate. I think they've used the feline chef.
yeah. I think it was yeah, there was eating in chefs in Freedom too, but I don't think they were very animated, expressive cats in the older games. But the one in Monster Hunter World is this muscular cat with an eye patch who seems to mostly supervise the cats around him, but always puts the finishing touch on the food. They're very funny, goofy cutscenes.
Yeah, I love those.
So, Nick, if you have one or two pieces of advice that Nathan did not go over for new players to Monster Hunter World, what do you think is important to know?
I think the main thing is that you need patience. This is not a game where you can go in and just spam the attack button and win the quest. You have to be methodical. You have to watch the attack patterns of the monsters and learn them. Uh, that being said, I don't think it's as difficult as people make it out to be. It's kind of as difficult as you make it. Like, you know what I mean?
And I
It's
should mention, World is way easier to deal with than those busted hit boxes on the PSP games.
Yeah, it's so much more
Yeah.
accessible. Um, my second tip would probably be always make sure your weapon is sharpened. Uh, when I first started out playing, I always said to myself, why am I not doing enough damage? It turned out that my sharpness level had went down completely, and when that happens, your weapon doesn't do anything. That being said, the hard part is sharpening your weapon mid battle, because you're locked into an animation. So be aware of your surroundings, um, and don't be afraid to run away. That's something that's very vital to this experience. You do not have to tackle everything head on all the time. Running away is sometimes the best strategy, actually.
You're absolutely 100% right on patience. Like, learn a monster's movements before going in, and don't just dive in and attack. That's absolutely excellent advice. And sharpness, when we've mentioned sharpness several times, and like if your sharpness gets too low, sometimes it'll bounce off a monster's hide, and it'll lock you in this big reaction animation, and you could get killed from it. So increases in sharpness. I think it's different game to game, but it's an increase in damage between 5 and like 20%, depending on the level of sharpness you're jumping up to. And going from yellow down to orange is a decrease in sharpness of about 25%. So that's a lot. That's a big increase. So keeping your weapon sharp is absolutely great advice. And I don't know what advice I would offer outside of what both of you already said. Trying all the weapons, making sure to keep stocked in items and food, be patient, keep your weapon sharpness up. That's all excellent. I guess the one thing I would recommend is once you're settled on a weapon and are in the hunt, just sort of know your range. Like again, every hammer is the same, every longsword is the same. Although every weapon of a certain type will have the same animations and same range. And knowing exactly how slow your weapon is and what range it is, and when you can roll out and when you can cancel into a guard or something, just understanding everything about the weapon you're using is very, very helpful. And also pay attention to monster weaknesses if you can. I used to just have to look on the internet to find out where monsters' weak points were and what their weak elements were, but hitting them with the appropriate element, or hitting them with a status effect that they're weak against, or hitting them on the head versus the body, it differs monster to monster. But going in with a strategy and knowing exactly the limitations of your weapon, I think is the difference between a successful hunt and a failed hunt sometimes. And in World, it's easier than ever, because if you collect enough tracks and droppings and hunt a monster enough, you can go and visit one of the people in your base they'll give you a handy chart of every monster of a monster's weak points and weaknesses. That's super, super helpful. So I may never have to visit the old Monster Hunter Wikia ever again.
I remember doing that back in the day.
Yeah, it's like, okay, new monster, I have no idea what I'm doing. What element is it weak against? Okay, fire on its head. Got it. Get my fire hammer and try to hit it in the head. and now I can do that without going online and with handy charts and everything, and it's excellent. Monster Hunter World is the extra information and extra tricks that Monster Hunter World gives you are awesome. So, man, we've covered almost everything, haven't we? We've been talking about Monster Hunter World and weapons and armors and cats and monsters. One thing that Monster Hunter has almost always done, and we've alluded to this a little bit, is they do the Capcom thing of they'll have the Monster Hunter game will come out, and then it'll have its Super Turbo edition come out a year or a year and a half later. So and it hasn't been true for every single Monster Hunter game, but for a great many of them. And Monster Hunter Generations, that 3DS one, has a Switch version come out. That was basically the expanded version of that game. It came out in Japan last year, which as if the Switch needed any more help selling out in Japan. It had a Monster Hunter game that the rest of the world did not get. So we're probably going to get a Monster Hunter World G or Super World or whatever they're going to call it in another year or two from now.
World Ultimate, probably.
World Ultimate, or maybe Monster Hunter. I think Monster Hunter New World would be a cool title for that. But yeah, we'll see exactly how they do that. But I think there is going to be some DLC for World, but I think that that an upgraded version is inevitable. So, I'm going to make this a double-sided question, I'm afraid, and I'm going to start with you, Nick. First of all, are you upset that the Switch version did not come out in North America? And second, what is something that you would like to see in a Monster Hunter World G or Super World or what have you?
Yeah, I'm very disappointed that the Switch version did not come out to, it didn't get localized. I think that made so much sense for the system. It baffled me. At the same time, I think Capcom wanted to sort of rebrand the series as being more accessible than ever with World, and so I understand why they didn't bring it over. I think it was a bad time. They didn't want it to be, here's this really difficult series, now it's on Switch. They wanted it to be, hey, here's this series that used to be difficult. We've made it a little easier. Now's the perfect time to jump in. Don't play any of the previous ones. If you've never played before, play this one. But it's disappointing. What I would like to see more than anything is a return of some of my favorite monsters.
Oh yes, as a third corollary to this question, that's exactly the kind of content I wanted you to bring up. So please continue.
I love the Brachydios. That is probably my favorite one.
I unlocked that in Monster Hunter Generations. That was one of the most recent ones I unlocked before I stopped playing the game, but I don't think I ever fought it.
It's
fun.
It's amazing. It's easily my favorite. I would like to see the return of something like there was one from Generations, the Mizusune, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Mizusune, yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing to see in HD.
Well, that was such a unique monster.
Mizusune is one of the... I have fought a Mizusune, and it's one of the most beautiful monsters in the series. It's a very shimmery, pretty water dragon that has a lot of bubble moves, and it moves kind of like a serpent does, like very flowy movements. It's a cool looking monster.
It's amazing, and it highlights the animations in Monster Hunter is always one of my favorite parts of the series. The monsters just move so naturally and realistically. It's wonderful. Other than that, I think that's all I really want. I'm embracing the new changes they're putting into this one. I don't know if there's anything I would like to see them necessarily tweak. I think they pretty much did everything that they could to make this more accessible while still maintaining the classic difficulty. I would like to see maybe a new area of the map. That would be cool. Yeah. I just unlocked the Coral Highlands, which is easily my favorite area in the entire series.
Do we know how many areas there are in World? Because it looks like there's fewer compared to older games, and I'm sure it's because they have to. It's much more complex and much more labor intensive to do these gigantic areas in World compared to older ones. But do we know how many there are?
With where I'm at in the story, it looks like there's one more left. So I'm thinking 4. I think it's called the Ancient Forest, the Wildspire Waste, the Coral Highlands, and the Rottenville.
Yeah,
I think
I remember seeing the trailer for each of those four, but there's no more beyond those four.
my map
Release
has
the
one.
fifth.
My
Maybe
map has
fifth.
one shaded part left. Everything else is unlocked.
It might be like a secret fifth
There
area,
could be,
maybe.
yeah.
There could be like a special arena for fighting like the big elder dragons at the end, because there's usually
Right.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah, there is. So when
But
you fought the Gormagala in 4 Ultimate, you went to a special area to fight it.
right. So yeah, a new zone and some returning monsters would be excellent additions. I agree. So, Nathan, same question to you. What are your thoughts on the Switch Monster Hunter? What do you want to see in a expanded version of Monster Hunter World that we're probably getting? And specific to that second one, what are a returning monster or two you'd like to see?
Alright, so yeah, I also expressed my disappointment with them not releasing the Switch version. Though I kind of understand the reason why, because if you put like say like the old Monster Hunter Generations 2, which is basically what it is, Double Cross, and then you put next to World, it's kind of like you can see the huge difference uh, that they've made since Generations. But maybe hoping they bring it back someday, maybe after a little bit after World, or maybe bring it out like later this year, maybe like holiday season. For seeing us for what I would like to see in a G, maybe just bringing back like deviant monsters or the alternate monsters. Those ones will have different attack patterns and
And different colors.
have
That's very
different
important.
colors.
You gotta have your
Different
you gotta
colors,
have your
just so you know it's better.
your Azure Rathalos and your Silver Rathalos and your what is it, Pink Raytheon
The gold Rathalos.
and yeah, Pink Raytheon and Gold Raytheon and
Purple Ludroth, I think.
Yeah,
I was a
gotta
big
have all
I'm
those
a big fan of the green Nargacuga.
Yeah, so maybe we'll probably see those in that. It's not necessarily I would certainly want it, but I just imagine that's probably what future G or Ultimate would probably be like. And for 3 monsters, I'd like to see back. I haven't looked at the. I'll admit I haven't looked at the full list for Worlds, and I was like sure what's back. But I mentioned that the Logic Cruise is one of my favorites. I don't know if that's in this game or not. I would like to see that.
I have looked at lists. I don't think the Logicrus is back. Let's see. Rathalos and Raytheon are back. Diablos is back. Barath is back. Uh, the Devil Joe is, I think, the first DLC they already announced, or might already be in the game. I'm not sure. But they only brought back around 10 or 12 returning large monsters.
Okay, so maybe like the Uragan was probably one of my favorites to fight too.
I don't know if that one's in or not. I'd have to look at the list.
Okay, I'd like to see that one back. The one with the gigantic chin.
I did hunt one of those in Generations, but that was not a Generation 2 monster, so I'm not that familiar with the Uragan or Uragan. I'm not sure. These monster names are always so crazy. I think everyone pronounces them all differently.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
And now I'm curious to make sure that any of the ones I want to see back aren't actually coming or not, because it has been a day or two since I checked that list. But personally, I think that Monster Hunter on the Switch is awesome, and it's a little disappointing we didn't get it, but I think it's probably because Capcom really wanted a worldwide launch for Monster Hunter World, and they just put all of their localization effort into preparing World, is my theory at least. And also, I mean, Monster Hunter is insanely popular in Japan, but only a niche popularity worldwide. So like they really want. I think they really wanted a Monster Hunter on the Switch for the Japanese market, and we're focusing on a more international market for Monster Hunter World, which is part of why it has so many, quality of life improvements and is launching on multiple systems and all of that. So I think it was probably a resources decision and not a respect decision for Capcom to localize World and not Double X or Generations 2 or whatever they would call it. So it's a little disappointing, but I mean we're getting Monster Hunter World in the condition that it's in, so I can't be that upset. And stuff I want to see in Monster Hunter World G or Super World or World Ultimate. I agree with everything you both already said. I'm not sure I want a new weapon type because 14 is already a lot. But it would be cool to have more than 3 ranged weapons. If they did a new approach with a new kind of ranged weapon that wasn't a bowgun or a bow, I would like to see that a lot because they've had the same selection of ranged weapons for about a decade now, and that seems a little stale. Like they added the charge blade and switch axe and insect glaive in the intervening 10 years between Unite and World, but no ranged stuff. So I'd like to see something like that. And in terms of returning monsters, I mean, my two favorite monsters of all time are the Nargacuga, which is a Black Panther wyvern that has like zigzag moves and evasion armor and looks super cool. I'd love to see that thing come back. It was the cover monster of Freedom Unite, and also one of my favorite monsters to fight and also least favorite monsters to fight, the Rajang, which I mentioned. I made an ice sword and shield just to fight it. It's a big like demon minotaur looking beast, and I would love to see that come back. And also the monsters have all these different classifications. There's no mammals that you fight in Monster Hunter World. It's only wyverns and dragons.
It's odd. Oh, does that mean
They could bring back something like the Volvodon.
Yeah. There's like there's been a dozen plus sort of large carnivorous mammals that you fight in past Monster Hunter games, like the Rajang, which is a big minotaur thing. The Volvodon is like an anteater or a pangolin maybe. That's like that has a big tongue. The Lagombi is a giant snow rabbit. There's
bring back the Congalala.
Yeah, the giant the pink fart monkey with a hippo face. There's a wide variety of mammals that have been in Monster Hunter games over the years. The Gammoth with the giant mastodon snow elephant from Generations. I thought that was a really cool monster. But none of them made it into World, which is too bad. So yeah, I vote for a Nargacuga and more mammal monsters in a hypothetical Monster Hunter World Ultimate. So, man, we have been listing things and talking about favorites and just gushing about Monster Hunter as a series for quite a while now. I think it goes without saying that anyone that is Monster Hunter curious should give World a try if they possibly can. Nathan, do you have a final word that you want to give on Monster Hunter as a series and looking to the future of Monster Hunter that you just want to say before we start cleaning up?
Oh, I'd just like to see the series reach more people. I'm so glad to see that World is finally like almost becoming mainstream. It'll be nice to be able to teach new people about Monster Hunter.
Very cool. And Nick, same to you.
Yeah, I agree. I wish more people would give it a shot. Like I said, I think it has a reputation of being like super insanely difficult, and it's really not. So I'm glad that there are so many quality of life improvements in this one that I think more people are going to jump on board. And that, as someone who loves the series as much as I do, having new fans is just, delightful.
Right on. Yeah, it's going to be super cool having a Monster Hunter game that has has a lot of enthusiasm around it, and you can get matches online all the time. When my friend moved away, and I started to stop playing Monster Hunter, we tried to use a program called PS3 Ad Hoc Party to play when he was in Germany and I was in the East Coast of the United States, where basically you hook up a PS3 with a wired connection and then play local PSP multiplayer games by picking up on the PS3 hotspot. It was weird and complicated, and about 90% of the rooms playing in there were Monster Hunter or Dissidia.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it was a messy program to use, but we did manage to do some like Silver Wrath, Gold Wrath in the arena double hunts together. Because you got to get those Rathalos jewels and Rathalos heavenly scales.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm really happy about the reaction to Monster Hunter World, and I'm looking forward to playing more of it throughout the year. So I think that about wraps it for episode 120 of Retro Encounter, ladies and gents. Next week we have a very special cat-themed episode. that Alana is hosting. It is a sequel to the dog episode that we did in 2017, and I know that there was a lot of excitement among the people that are on that episode to talk about kitties for an hour and a half. So please look forward to that. Following that, we have 2 Valkyrie profile episodes coming soon, and also another dog episode, but not about RPG dogs. A special episode for the Chinese New Year, Year of the Dog. Okami. We're going to talk about Okami for an hour, and probably 45 minutes of that hour will just be Caitlin, because I'm not sure I've ever heard of a person who likes Okami more than Caitlin does. So, but we have not recorded that yet. But I'm looking forward to being on that episode. So, if you, the listener, wants to get in contact with us, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. We read everything that is directed to us. There is also the rpgfan.com message boards, the RPG Fan Facebook page, and our Twitter account, rpgfancom, because someone else had taken RPG Fan by the time we got on Twitter. So you have to remember to add that com at the end. I've accidentally added the wrong account a couple times over the course of my social media career.
Is it still active?
I don't think so, but I think it's been sitting around mostly inactive for years. But whatever, we're RPGFancom on Twitter. And also, if you want to leave us, some positive feedback or any kind of constructive feedback, the best way to do so is to review us on our iTunes, Google Play, or any podcast listening venue that you found us, where you found us. So, starting with you, Nick, what is the best way for listeners to get in touch with you?
The best way is you can email me at nickr@rpgfan.com or find me on Twitter at @theEzioKinway.
Right on. And Nathan, same to you.
All right, so you can email me at nathanl@rpgfan.com, and my Twitter handle is @smashking27.
Right on. And I am at @TheRealMonsoon on Twitter, and my RPG Fan email is my last name, Sollosi, @rpgfan.com. And I also have a second Twitter account, @EvokerForDogs, where I nerd out about things like Power Rangers and Persona Q and things that are just too annoying for my main Twitter account. So, listeners, thank you for listening to us talk about Monster Hunter for so long. It is a series near and dear to all three of us, and I hope that you join us in the new world hunting those Rathaloses. Rathali? Just Rathalos? No ending? What are our thoughts on Monster Hunter plurals, guys?
Oh boy. I
I
think
usually-
it's like moose.
Okay, so no plural attachment, no changing the syllable.
Exactly.
Right, okay, so please join us in the new world hunting all of those Seregios. Wait, no, that's not in the game. No. What's one of the cool new ones?
Tobi Kadachi.
Tobi Kadachi. Yeah. So thank you. Good night and good luck.